before the time, which is great. So welcome to How to Say No. And it's clear just from listening to some of your thoughts in the chat there and what's coming through on this polling. This is just a huge issue for so many people, me included, myself included, and Jess, who's my colleague and joining us here for the first one, was very keen to do this one as well. So I think it's fair to say that most people suffer in some way with just having to deal with the idea of saying no. So if you haven't come across me before, just to introduce myself. So I'm Graham Allcott. I'm the founder of Think Productive. I'm also the author of the book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And for the last 12 or so years, Think Productive has been helping companies across the UK and actually across the world to make space for what matters and ultimately improve productivity and also work-life balance. Lowering stress levels around the world is what we do. My contact details are on there, so feel free to make a note of those. We'll share them again at the end. And if you want to continue the conversation after the webinar, then please do. And just to introduce my colleague, Jess.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jess. I work at Think Productive HQ. I am the head of brand, so I manage all of our marketing. So if you're on this webinar because you saw a post about it on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or you saw it on our Instagram stories, then that was me posting that. So thank you for coming. And yeah, if you want to connect with me, then just my LinkedIn details and my website are just up on the screen there.
So I'm just going to share you the results of the poll. So what we're finding is that the biggest issue seems to be just the idea of wanting to please everyone, and saying yes feels like the most obvious thing to do to be able to please people. We're going to talk about why that's not always the case later on in this webinar. So that's come out as our top answer, and then very high scores for I just don't have the headspace to prioritize. So you end up saying yes to too much stuff and getting too much on your plate almost by accident. I can definitely relate to that right now, having taken on a couple of client things to do this week, which were very much kind of last minute requests from clients and have left me a bit swamped this week. So I can definitely vouch for that one. And also it's my boss asking, so it's my boss. I have to say yes to my boss. So lots of stuff that we are going to cover on this webinar, and stuff that I think will hopefully help you to change and reframe in your mind the idea of saying no. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks, Graham. So it looks like around sort of like 39–40% of you fit into this category of people that are you're feeling quite overwhelmed. You have so much on your plate that you're just not sure what you can say yes to and what you should be saying no to. So if you're feeling super overwhelmed, then some of the problems that you might be facing are you might be finding it harder to focus on high impact projects. So it's much easier to say yes to things landing on your plate when you have no idea what you already have on your plate. So you're saying yes when you really should be saying no, but you don't quite have clarity over what you should be saying no to. And then that just means that you end up not meeting your commitments. So you're saying yes to everything because that's much easier than taking a step back and saying, and really looking at what you have on your plate, what you have coming up and what you should be working on, and then making an educated no. All that just means that you're not meeting your commitments because you've overcommitted, and then you might be getting chased by your line manager or your colleague. You might be missing deadlines, and you'll be feeling it. You'll know if you've set yourself a deadline, you've promised something by Monday, Monday comes and goes, you haven't managed to get to it because you've got so much on your plate, and you're hoping nobody's going to pull you up on it, and it just ends up making you feel really stressed. So you might be feeling a little bit like this. So I'm sure we've all felt like this before, and especially with everything that's going on at the moment in the world, it just feels like you're on a hamster wheel. It's going 100 miles an hour. There's no stopping it, and there's no getting off. So before we get into sort of the specifics around how to say no, and we've got some scripts on how you can manage that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some productivity basics. So these are things that we like to recommend you do, and we all do, so that it becomes much easier to then say no because you've got these things nailed. So that's things like having a second brain. So there's a really good quote by David Allen who says, "Your brain is for having ideas and not for holding them." So we recommend you have a second brain. That could be a pen and paper system, like a bullet journal, or it could be an app. So, there's apps like Todoist, which I use, Asana, Remember the Milk, just having a really good second brain. So when you're in that position of overwhelm, you can dump it all there and you're not having to rely on the brain in your head to remember things. You have your second brain to remember those things for you. We've all been in that position where we're about to fall asleep and something pops into our head that we realize we've forgotten. And we're like, I'm sure I'll remember that in the morning. And then you instantly forget. So having a really good second brain that's really clear is really helpful. And then having a project list. So most people don't have a project list, but if you do work towards projects, so that might be you might have KPIs, or you might have a 3-year strategic plan. Having a really good project list that's clear with next actions means that you can keep track of all that stuff that you're working on and make sure that you're focusing on that really high value work. And then the way to manage all of that is to review. So to have a weekly review is just a really good way to increase your focus and to get clarity around what you're doing. It also helps to then say no to the peripheral things that might be coming up. So the weekly review is a space that you will set yourself every week to go over that project list, to make sure it's up to date, to make sure it's clear, that there are goals there that are achievable, and next actions is really important. And that's also where you'll review your second brain. So you'll be able to capture all of the notes you've taken from meetings you've had that week, and you'll be able to make sure that you're not missing anything. So these 3 productivity basics are a really good way to set you up to say no much easier. So we're interested to see, I think Graham's just put a poll up there, which of these 3 productivity basics are you currently doing on a weekly basis? So do you keep all of your actions in a second brain? Are you keeping a clear and up-to-date project list, or are you doing a regular and consistent review, which can be quite hard to regularly and consistently review is quite a hard thing to maintain. And especially if you're feeling really overwhelmed, the last thing you want to do is take 2 to 3 hours out of your day to go and review. It just feels like the last thing that you have time to do. But then by not reviewing, you're just going to add to your overwhelm.
I think it's really interesting how when you get into that trap of busy, our brain is biased much more towards action and doing rather than quality thinking
and reflecting.
And my experience is that the thing that often gets missed and leads to more busyness is taking the space for what really matters, which is working out what your priorities are, doing that quality, take a step back kind of thinking. So if you're partly joining this because you feel overwhelmed, then I would really encourage you over the next couple of days to find a space, a couple of hours, as Jess was saying. And if you don't have access to a good checklist to do this, then if you just Google Think Productive weekly checklist, you'll be able to find a little template from ours. Little question in the chat also was just about those apps that you mentioned, Jess, and someone saying So Kavita's saying, which apps and which one do you recommend? So I'm currently on one called Nosby. I think Todoist is probably the one I'd recommend if I was going to say just try one out as a beginner. There's no kind of single app I'd recommend, just from the point of view of they have slightly different color schemes and sort of, they all do basically the same thing, but they all have kind of slightly different user interfaces and stuff. So it's really the one that you're going to be most comfortable with is the one that I'd recommend using. Todoist, I think, is probably a very, very safe bet as a good place to start. So if I had to recommend one to get started, I would say Todoist. Someone else, Catherine in the chat, saying, what do you think about Microsoft To Do? Yeah, does all the same stuff. There's so many of them. Trello as well. All of those different apps will give you, as long as you can do two simple things on it, which is basically sort your actions based on where you're going to be to do them, so by people and places, and being able to also sort your actions based on a project view. So as long as they've got some kind of context or place type function and some kind of project kind of function, you'll have enough. And that will give you the ability, when you're doing a weekly review, to really see what's on your plate, see what's coming up, and also see project by project what needs to happen over the next few weeks and months.
Well, thanks, Graham. So if you do these things, so you do a weekly review, so I can see in the poll that got over half of you have a second brain, a lot of you are keeping a clear and up-to-date project list, and also a lot of you are doing a regular review, so that's really good. By doing these things, it just helps you and makes it much easier to be ruthless. You know exactly what you've got on your plate, and so it's much easier to start saying no to things because it's quite clear what you've got coming up. So I'd say there's 3 ways to be ruthless. One of those is being ruthless with yourself. So that's about having self-discipline, recognizing the things that you're drawn to that might distract you. So for some, that could be, scrolling Twitter to see if there is an update on the US election. It could be going down a YouTube rabbit hole and having no idea how you've gotten there, but it's hours have gone by and you're nowhere near where you started. It's about being ruthless and recognizing those things and then putting something in place so you only have to be ruthless with yourself once, instead of having to be ruthless with yourself over and over. So for example, that could be if you find that you're on your phone a lot and you have some deadlines coming up, you could download an app that will block you accessing your phone or specific apps. So one that we like to use and recommend is called Forest. So you download it, you set the timer for how long you want your phone blocked for, and then in that time, it will just grow a little tree. And then if you pick up your phone before the end of the timer, the tree dies, and obviously nobody wants the tree to die. So that's like a really nice way to get into the psychology of not touching your phone, because nobody does want the tree to die.
By the way, everyone who thinks that is just a game, the people who make Forest invest some of their profits into actually growing trees. So you can actually have genuine climate guilt by procrastinating. So it really works on a number of levels.
And then the other way that it can help you be ruthless is with your thinking. So when you have really defined actions and a really clear project list, then it helps you focus on the stuff that really creates value. So depending on what industry you're in, that could be focusing on the stuff that's going to bring in sales to meet your sales targets. For us, it's focusing on making sure we have brilliant training that has great learning and blended learning. So there is a really good quote by Gerard Ratner, whose dad told him, never spend money on doing up the stockroom, spend money where your customers can see it. So you have to be relentless in the way that you approach your work, and like relentless with the ruthfulness, so that you're focused on the stuff that is going to create value. And then lastly, you need to be ruthless with your attention. So you need to set boundaries with other people, because you could have a really good system in place, but there will always be other people that are going to want your attention. So it's about setting really clear boundaries with those people who might interrupt you when you're in your flow or when you need to do deep work. So that could be having surgery hours or an open door policy, so you can be really clear with your team about when they can come to you and say, you know, from 2 till 5 every day, my door's open, you know, send me a Zoom invite if you want to have a chat, you know, if you need to brainstorm or you have any stucks, that's the time that I'm available. And then the flip side to that is they know when you're not available. They know until 2 o'clock you're off doing deep work. At Think Productive, we have a no internal meetings Wednesday. So it's like a really easy way to for us to manage our attention. So throughout the week, we know Wednesday is the day where we're all going to be off doing really deep work. And so we don't want to interrupt each other's deep work. So we don't have any meetings on that day. So those are like
and because I get to make my own rules, mine is basically every morning. So from early in the morning until I think it's 1 o'clock most days and 2 o'clock on Mondays. I have that blocked in my diary as create time. So it's basically, that's my time where if you look at my Outlook calendar, it's booked, and I just have a really strong ruthless boundary around not letting people book that unless there's like, you know, a really clear exception kind of thing. So it's kind of like someone was asking there about the surgery hours thing. So, you know, if you think about like having an open door policy and saying, here are my surgery hours, here are the times where whatever you're working on, if you're a member of my team, you know, book me, come and talk to me at those times. What that allows you to do is say, those are the times where I'm available. And then you can be a bit more ruthless about saying there's some other times of the day where I'm going to say no, I'm going to be unavailable. Should we talk about people pleasers?
Yeah, I just wanted to put this little quote up by Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist. So just something to keep in mind when you are thinking about saying no. So he says, when you say yes to others, make sure that you're not saying no to yourself. So just a nice little thing to keep in the back of your mind when you do start saying no.
Which again, I think brings us nicely back to where we started that bit about the kind of productivity 101 thing, right? Like if you've got a really good sense of what's on your plate, it's much easier to say no because you just have a really clear idea of where the next week of allocated time and attention needs to be. Right, let's talk about if you're a people pleaser and some of the problems that can entail. And this was our top answer on the poll a few minutes ago. So some of the problems that can exist if you're a people pleaser is, number one, anxiety, and it creates very stressful relationships. So by feeling that burden of wanting to say yes to everything and all of the time, can make it very stressful and difficult and anxious to say no. And if you have said no, then you probably are going to ruminate on that and think about that you know, long afterwards, thinking, oh, have I let that person down? And I'm going to give you a way to flip that around in a minute. Blurring of the boundaries as well. So often if you're saying yes to too much stuff and wanting to please everybody, you may be going outside of your own remit and into someone else's. You may be taking on things that really your boss should be doing or other people in your team should be doing. And that's unfair, you know, right? Because you end up doing more than your fair share. You've probably heard that phrase, which goes something like, if you want something done, ask a busy person. And, you know, if you get the reputation for being someone who always says yes to stuff, of course, people are going to gravitate to you and try and offload their work onto you, which just isn't fair. So really important to practice this, learn and sort of develop the muscle of saying no. And so here are a few ways to do that. The first is a really simple one. Recognize that no is a complete sentence. So you don't have to justify saying no. Of course, there are occasions where you do. But if you start from the premise that it's okay to say no, and it's you know, actually okay to say no without offering an excuse or a justification, it's really difficult to do. It's something I've practiced a lot over the years. I remember I had a really big breakthrough a few years ago. I got invited by my publisher to go to this party in London, and basically I live an hour away on the train from London. I don't really like going into London in the evenings to do stuff like that. I don't really like networking parties and stuff like that. And when I first got invited to one, I went along and I really hated it. And then when I got invited a year or so later, I said no, but with an excuse. And then by about the third year, I was like, I'm just going to say no. So I went back and I just said, I don't really like these kind of things. I'm sure it'd be great, but it's just not my thing. So I'm just going to say no. And um, it felt so good just being able to say, yeah, I'm just choosing not to do this. I wasn't kind of lying and saying, telling a white lie, saying, oh, I'm really busy or I've got some other plan. Like I didn't have another plan, but I just didn't want to do it. So I just said no. And I think that's not always possible, but it was a huge revelation when I realized that I could get comfortable with that. And that was a really important thing for me. Here's a few other scripts that you can try as well. So there are a whole number of ways where if you do need to give some kind of excuse or some kind of explanation along with saying no, there are a few things that have really worked well for me that you can try too. So one is to say, and I think a lot of these really come down to the same kind of idea, which is basically that it's really important to honor and value the thing that you're being requested to do. So bear in mind that if you're being requested to take part in a project or speak at an event or whatever, the person who's asking you, it really values this event or this project or this thing they want done. So it's really important to value that thing and say and say no to that for some kind of reason, rather than directly saying no to that person. So I'm fully booked until February, but if you're happy to wait till then, I'll definitely consider doing this at a later stage. Nice way of kind of testing someone's commitment. Do they really want you involved? Do they really need your input on this? And if you can push back in terms of time, then you're kind of testing their commitment. The ultimate one of those, I think, is the one on the left there. So I'm sorry, I don't have the time to do a good job with this. This thing's really important to get right, and I don't necessarily have enough capacity to be able to do that in the way that it really needs to be done because it's important. So you're really honoring and valuing that person, and you're really honoring and valuing the thing that they want to do. But at the same time, you're saying, look, this just doesn't fit with everything else that I've got going on. At the bottom there, I can help with this, but show me what I need to drop to make room for it. Really good one for your boss. If you're talking to your boss and, we all have those moments where it's like the Superman test, right? Your boss arrives at your desk or on a Zoom call and says, got this huge thing. It's a massive emergency. Are you going to step up to the plate? Like, you always want to be the person who steps up to the plate and says, yes, I can be the superhero. But actually, we all also know that we've got this other to-do list behind us. And there's often that moment where we have to decide, do we want to be the superhero because we want to be too? Or are we going to actually push back a little bit? So to push back in a way that says, look, I'd love to do this thing, but here's all the other stuff you've given me. It's all on my project list and my actions list. It's all part of my second brain. Let's look at this objectively and look at the data here. And work out where this fits in terms of prioritization. That's a much more objective way of having that conversation rather than the subjective thing of, someone's asking me to do something, I'm saying no, it looks like I'm unreliable or not committed or whatever, which is a very subjective response. Sorry, I can't help you, but have you tried? So thinking about other people, other methods to do it. So again, you're investing somewhat in the idea of that project or that thing. You're just saying that you're not going to be the person that's going to really take it forward. And also kind of personal policies and allocations. So everyone's been talking about Zoom fatigue recently. So perhaps you have some kind of personal policy about the number of Zoom calls you do in a day. And then it's like, hey, I've used up my Zoom calls today, but we can meet next week. I have a similar one around travel into London for meetings. And I get a lot of those emails of people kind of asking if they can buy me coffee and that kind of thing. And I do some of them, but often what I'll do is I'll say, look, I do 2 London days a month. I've actually used up my allocation for this month. So again, I'm not kind of saying you are not worthy of my time and attention. I'm saying, hey, like I've used up my allocation this month. Another time I would have been able to say yes. And again, you can kind of say, maybe come back to me in a couple of months' time and it might be different. So just a few scripts there that I think can just really be helpful if we do need some kind of justification, but the main one's in the middle, right? No can be a complete sentence too. Let's talk about meetings. I think lots of people need to say no to more meetings, including the people who are organizing some of those meetings, but that's another story. If you want more about meetings, you can actually pre-order a book that I've just written with Hayley Watts, who's one of our Ninja colleagues. It's called How to Fix Meetings, and there's that's already available with an Amazon link for those of you who want to pre-order that book. It comes out next year, April next year. So how to fix meetings. But yeah, saying no to meetings. One little golden rule here is no agenda, no attendance. So, if someone wants to take away an hour and a half of your time, make sure they have a really good rationale and reason behind that. So are they really clear about what the meeting is for? Are they clear about how you fit in? And really the top ninja level version of that is no purpose statement, no attendance. So rather than just having an agenda of we will discuss this, this, and this, the purpose statement sits above that and it says, well, why? Like, what are we doing with this? So get into the habit, if you're organizing meetings, of writing a purpose statement. The purpose of this meeting is to get to this point, discuss this thing, decide this thing, and then here are the agenda items. And then you'll find that you're much clearer on who you need in meetings, and you can help other people to say no to some of those things that steal their time as well. And then deleting isn't cheating. So I'm a big believer that sometimes what we need to do is renegotiate things that we'd previously committed to. So sometimes we might need to cheat here a little bit. So there's just something really urgent has come up, so therefore I need to kind of rearrange my diary. It's always good if you say there's a confidential reason why I can't do this thing, whatever. These are like things that you can't use all the time, obviously, right? Because then you just get this reputation of being unreliable. But like every now and again, using a cheeky kind of explanation, I think is totally fine. And likewise, stealth and camouflage. So spending some time being deliberately a bit less available, I think is a really valuable thing to think about as well. And I'm going to just invite you right now to think about this. So you're on a webinar right now called How to Say No. Why don't you think about what's on your calendar in terms of meetings? And afterwards, get back to some of those people. I've just been on a webinar, and so I've decided I'm going to say no to this meeting. And so instead of me calling this meeting for 5 people, which would have been 2 hours each, and that's 10 hours of company time, we're not going to bother with the meeting. We're just going to have, so-and-so and maybe a couple of people. They're going to work on a decision. And if anyone else has anything to add, just email them directly. But sometimes if we just take these things for granted, we do things as we've always done them. We end up just creating a culture of more and more meetings, and saying no to meetings can free up a lot of time, and also, again, really focus people in on the decisions rather than spending lots of time in Zoom rooms and meeting rooms. One of the other things that I really, a big learning for me that I noticed a few years ago was I reached out to someone asking them to be part of a book project that I was working on. And this person was a bit of a hero of mine, and they said no. But they said no in such a beautiful way, and really supportive of me and what I was doing. Really supportive of the project, and just saying, listen, I'm so under pressure with all the other things that I've got going on. I can't commit to this, and I'm really sorry about that. But it was done in such a beautiful way, and what it left me realizing was that saying no, yes and no, it's not like a zero-sum game where every time you say yes, people are impressed with you and you've pleased that person, and if you say no, you're automatically going to let them down and they're going to think horribly of you. I found myself realizing that at the end of this exchange, and it was just an email exchange, my respect for that person had gone up, not down, and they'd said no. And so if you say no in a really beautiful way, if you say no in a way that's compassionate and really honors the person's work and what they're trying to do, then actually they can think even better of you than they did before. So if you're a people pleaser, that's really good news. And really, it becomes an opportunity to win additional respect from that person, rather than to lose respect from that person. And I think the other thing, particularly for people pleasers, is to think about the fact that you are enough, right? What you're doing already is amazing work, and it's like building a muscle. So once you recognize that and say, look, I'm okay, I don't need to take on everything, I don't need to do everything. You can start to build up this muscle of saying no. And the more you do this, the more you use some of those scripts and get comfortable with just the idea of no and it being a complete sentence, the more you'll find that it becomes easier to do it again in the future.
And you also find that people come to expect it. So you might find at first, if you're somebody who people expect to say yes to everything, they might be, when you first start saying no, they might be a little bit taken aback. But the more you say no, the more they're going to come to expect it. And they know that you respect your own boundaries, so they're going to respect you even more.
For sure.
So there's some of you, I think it's around 20% of you that sort of fall into this category. So you're somebody who's super enthusiastic. So like to think of these people as like this super enthusiastic yes people. So when you're presented with a new project or perhaps a new client, or you're getting press requests, in the moment you say yes because you're just so excited to do it. Like you love what you do and you just want to do more of it. The problems with this is that you're just going to burn out. So if you're saying yes to everything, you're taking on everything that comes at you. It's unlikely that you've got a good work-life balance, because you'll always be on, always be working, like working late, working over the weekend, and just your mind is never going to be quiet and switched off from work. And so you're not taking that time to relax and recharge, recharge your batteries. And then in turn, that just means that you might end up being less productive or less efficient, because you're trying to do everything, and it's very hard to do everything very well. So if you are one of these people who in the moment you really want to say yes, here's a nice quote from Graham's coach, Rashid Ongularu, who said, don't say yes out of flattery or enthusiasm. So when you're thinking about saying yes or no, think about it as the slow yes and the fast no. So this is about being quite liberal with your no's and then quite conservative with your yeses. So that's
just to continue the election theme of the Conservatives, right?
Be a bit topical. So if you are somebody that just really loves to say yes and you're super excited, practice taking your time before you commit to that yes, and go away and really evaluate what it is that you're saying yes to. Whether in 6 months down the line, you're going to feel as excited about it. And then with the fast no, it's the art of saying no to good things and only saying yes to great things. So recognizing the difference and then being very liberal with those no's.
Which leads us on to our final section. So permission to say no to yourself. So yeah, Jess was just mentioning there just the idea of the slow yes and the fast no. Here's another little way to think about those differences. So if you're, if you're sat there thinking, oh, I should do this, this is the thing I should take on. Really make sure that you're saying no to most things, other than the things that are just like, do I want to do that? Hell yes, like that's absolutely the thing that I want to be doing. So if you're ever finding yourself saying yes in a tepid way, if you're ever finding yourself saying, oh, I should probably, we all have these kind of self-talk narratives. They often revolve around the words could and should, and they often revolve around comparisons with other people or other people in our industry, or we kind of often have this long list of narratives around expectations of ourselves. Really cut back on that. So if you're finding yourself saying tepid yeses, or just, oh, maybe I could do that, I should do that, I don't really want to, but that feels like a thing I need to be doing. Say no to more of those things, and end up only saying yes when you notice that as you think about that thing, or as someone tells you about that thing, hell yes, that's exactly what I want to be doing. That's where I want to be spending my time. So practice saying hell yes or no, and you'll really start to see changes there. And then this one is a quote from Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. He has this lovely phrase, and there's a good blog post about this as well, which is the art of letting small bad things happen. So one of the examples he uses in that piece is to say, sometimes he will, in order to really focus on his biggest priorities, he'll turn his email off for 3 hours. And he knows that in that time, maybe what will happen is a journalist will get in contact with them and say, hey, I've got this, because journalists always leave it till the very last minute. And I fall victim to this myself sometimes, where, in fact, I'll tell you a little story. Once I had my phone blocker app on, which is so that I can really focus on the stuff that's important to me. And then I had basically a voicemail when I turned the phone blocker app off, and it was from BBC 5 Live saying, hey, we're doing this urgent thing right now. Can you come and be on national radio and stuff? And it's like, yeah, I missed the opportunity to do that. But you know what? I was really focused on the stuff that mattered to me in that moment. And so small bad things will happen. And occasionally slightly larger, maybe medium things that are bad will happen. But what's more important is that you have that focus and you have that space, and you're able to really tune into your own priorities. So just don't ever assume that you can just go through life and like nothing bad's ever going to happen and everything's going to be great. Like, know that some small bad things will need to happen in order for you to be saying no and defending your attention and working on the right stuff. So get comfortable with that. Like, get comfortable with these small failures, because they're an important part of other successes. And then finally, so if you're a reader of Productivity Ninja, a fan of the book, you'll know that our 9th characteristic is a productivity ninja is a human and not a superhero. So it's often felt that, like, if you're someone who's really digging into the productivity and doing loads of stuff really well, it's like being a superhero and you'll have these special powers. But really, you're just a human with good tools and good skills. And you might look like a superhero, but you're just a human. So you have limitations. There are only a limited number of things that you can do before you start to get tired. You have depleting resources in terms of energy, and we need to recognize that in ourselves and in each other in order to really be realistic about the work that we're doing and focus on the right things. There'll always be too much to do at the end of the day. And so let's leave the final word with someone who knows a lot about success. So Warren Buffett, who I just think is a really great thinker in general, but he has this quote: the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. So don't think about saying no as being some kind of negative idea. Think about it as the key driver to your success in whatever field you're engaged in. So thanks, Warren.
Cool.
Jess.
So we will get on to some questions in a minute, but before that, we have loads of stuff going on at the moment, so we just want to run through some of the other events and stuff that we have got on. So you might be sat there thinking, yeah, my team, especially since working from home, have so many meetings, we're just working on email all the time, or you recognize that maybe you or your team feeling quite overwhelmed and you need help putting ruthlessness into action. Well, Think Productive can help with that. So we have a range of in-house workshops that can help you and your team with some of the challenges you're facing. So if you do want to learn anything about those, you can just head over to our website, which is just thinkproductive.co.uk.
And I run a weekly podcast called Beyond Busy. If you're not subscribed to that, then just check out Beyond Busy in your podcast app. Basically, I interview really interesting people from every kind of field imaginable, really. So from comedians to CEOs, from founders to people at the beginning of their career, and just ask them the big questions about work, life, happiness, and success. So subscribe to Beyond Busy. In fact, right after this, I'm just about to go and interview Anne Bowden, who is the founder of Starling Bank, who's going to be on the podcast next week. So very excited about that.
Very cool.
And final chance, if you haven't heard about this yet, so starting next Thursday, I'm doing a 6-week evening program. It's called 6 Weeks to Ninja, and it's at eventbrite.co.uk. Just type in 6 weeks in the search function there, you'll find it. If you want 10% off, then just type in the code "say no" just before you check out. You get 10% off. It starts next Thursday, so you've got to move quickly on this one. But the idea is that we will be guiding you through the winter, helping you to make all of those habits that we've just been talking about stick in terms of second brain and review and everything else. And with a little WhatsApp group to hold everyone accountable, deliberately small, and we'd love to see you there. So eventbrite.co.uk. I'm also doing this weekly email called Rev Up for the Week. So Sunday nights, I send out into your inbox some productive and positive thoughts for the week ahead. Feels like they're needed right now. This one coming up this week is going to be on survival tactics for winter, which was the theme last week, and I put it out to the group and got an amazing response of everyone's winter survival tactics. So I'm basically summarizing those this week, and then those will be on Sunday's email. So that's at grahamallcott.com. Let's take some questions. There's a question which I think I've screwed it up and deleted it, but there was a question about forest or Pomodoro or both. If you've done Pomodoro before and you haven't tried forest, I would just say just try forest, because you can actually use it in a Pomodoro style. You can set your timer for 25 minutes on forest as well. So I would just give forest a go and see how you get on with it. But if you find that Pomodoro is effective and you're not looking at your phone using Pomodoro, then it's pretty fine.
Got a question here for you, Graham. So could you please give an example of how you say no beautifully?
So I think the example that I was just giving on the slide there was, this person was, basically I was asking them to be interviewed as part of a book project that I was working on, and they came back with something that said, "Congratulations on writing a book. I know books are really hard. You're doing wonderful work. And I'm really sorry that I'm engaged in XYZ, and therefore I'm not going to be able to make time for this and do it well. But I really wish you every success with it." And so it was really about being, I think being against the idea of collaborating, but being totally for me. And I think it all comes down to that sort of personal connection. So doing it in a way that's kind, doing it in a way that connects to being supportive of what that person's trying to achieve. I think that for me is the essence of it. And then it kind of depends on, the particular circumstance or the particular thing. I always try and give, a little reason for a no if I feel like someone has really had to sort of pluck up the courage to ask me about that kind of stuff. Then I'll try and give a bit of rationale for my thinking, because I just think that's a polite and nice thing to do. And then there's other things that I get asked to do where I definitely want to practice not doing that and making no the complete sentence. But I think doing it in a way that's really allows that person to feel good about the project they're working on, even in the midst of a rejection, I think that's the key thing.
Cool. And how do you deal with people who won't take no for an answer?
I guess it depends who they are, doesn't it? So I think if it's your boss, then I would come back to what we were talking about near the beginning about saying it's a very different conversation if you're able to say, yes, I'll take this on, but show me what I need to drop. So here's my list of all the other stuff you've given me. Where does this fit? Is it the higher priority? Help me prioritize. So you're not saying, I'm saying no to this. You're saying, help me prioritize and fit this in properly. And is it above this thing or below that thing? So I think if it's your boss, which is, maybe the sort of thinking behind that question, then I would go in that direction. And then the other one that springs to mind on that is the people on kind of LinkedIn and stuff, where you add them on LinkedIn and then, or they add you on LinkedIn, and then within 10 minutes they're sending you like, "Oh, can I tell you about my company and book in here for 15 minutes and all that stuff." And in all honesty, I'll give a polite no in the first instance, and then if it carries on, I will just block them. So again, you don't want those people kind of stealing your attention at the same time. We are formally kind of at the end of our time, but what we will do, because we haven't had that much time for questions, we will, as we often do on these free webinars, we'll stick around for a bit of what I call after dark. So we'll formally wrap this up, and then if you want to just stay on the line, we'll just do some more questions and all of that kind of stuff. So because we want to honor your time, just to say thank you for being part of this free webinar today. The code, if you want to be involved in 6 Weeks in Energy, you've just got a week to do that, is at the bottom of the slide there. So say no. And we will be back with some more free webinars over the next few weeks. So we've got quite a lot going on, doing a webinar on the productivity of kindness for World Kindness Day. And then we'll be into doing some webinars around nutrition and how to eat to have the best energy for work towards the end of the year. Ahead of the book How to Have the Energy coming out early next year. So thank you again from myself and from Jess for being part of this.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you on a future free webinar. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
So for the benefit of the next little while, lots of chat's gone crazy with lots of people saying thank you everybody for
Thank you.
just saying hi in the chat there. We'll hang around for a few minutes. I've got to go and get ready for this podcast thing as well. But let's just do some more quick questions. I've got a long question here from Lucy who said, do you have any tips specific to healthcare settings where saying no has an impact on not just colleagues but patients and their care? Even allowing small bad things to happen can be inappropriate and harmful, but we're all still human and can't do everything. Yes. So that's a very good challenge to the idea of the art of letting small bad things happen, which is like, I don't want a pilot to do that, or like someone in an operating theatre, right? So I think there's often, there's obviously limits there to what we mean by small bad things in that circumstance. I would say those would be big bad things.
We often say, well, if you go offline for 3 hours, nobody's going to die, no buildings are going to burn down. But if you're a doctor or a firefighter, then maybe it will. So
but I think the overall spirit of that question is still true, right? Which is that you can be in a patient care kind of role, or in the kind of role where you do really need to be online the whole time, and yes, you still then have limitations. So I would say that's kind of twofold. The step one is communication with line management, and really open communication about where your limits are, like energetically, physically, mentally, stress, all of that stuff. And that relies on having a really good boss. And I think it's very, very difficult if you're in a situation where you just don't feel like your boss cares about that kind of stuff. There's a nice saying, which is, people join organizations, people leave bosses. And that's why, really, isn't it? And so I think it's really important to have that kind of relationship with your immediate line manager. And then if what's happening is that's a conversation you're having too often, and both of you are having the right intention to try and solve it, but it's happening all the time, that to me points to something a bit more cultural and systemic. So that's again about kind of looking at the different systems and expectations, and taking a step back. I think Productive, we have a thing which you do about once a year, which is we call it Smash Shit Up, and it's inspired by Brewdog, the beer company, where they literally go into the car park and smash it up. But it's also a spirit in the way that they work. So the idea is that everything is up for grabs in terms of questioning everything, and everything that we're doing that takes time, we're all allowed to question the impact and whether it's useful, and we're allowed to dismantle projects or meetings or things that just don't necessarily kind of serve to create really great impact in whatever the work is. So I think that is really important. If you find that you're regularly in this space of having to say no, it's like, so do we need to kind of change like how often we do the rounds with patients, or do we need to digitize stuff, or like there's probably something really big and systemic that is the opportunity there. And so I think if you're finding that's a regular thing around workload, it probably leads to some bigger strategic conversations, I think. Any more tips around saying no to bosses besides beautifully? So I think, again, I would say doing that in a from a place of objectivity. So help me prioritize, show me all the things that are on my plate is a really good one. If it's stuff that's like outside of your remit, like coming back to I think this is maybe a sort of last resort if if your boss really isn't taking no for an answer, but like coming back to the original job role, or getting in their head, coming back to the original job description and being like, here were the things that you said I was supposed to be doing, like this does not fit any of those. But also maybe getting in their head a little bit as the boss around what's important to them in the job. I had someone on the podcast, I can't remember who it was, a little while ago, saying a big light bulb moment for them was they had a whole series of criteria about job success in their head, and they realized that their whole criteria didn't matter at all, because what your job success is based on is how your boss views success in your job, not how you view it. And so having that conversation, getting in their head, I think this was Olivier Sibony, who's written this brilliant book, You're About to Make a Terrible Mistake. So check out that podcast episode. But yeah, he talks about this, and really like working out what success looks like to your boss in that role, rather than thinking about what a success look like to you in that role. Can be a really good way to just kind of reframe it. And maybe it's you end up saying yes to those things that your boss is asking you to do, but you're saying no to some of the things that you'd put on your to-do list to make room for them. That's kind of another way of thinking about it. Lucy saying, love the idea of smash things up. Little tip for that. So one of the things I do with smash it up is everyone writes it on post-it notes, so it's kind of anonymous, and then the person reading them out should be someone who doesn't know the handwriting. That's really helpful.
So question here from Helen: how do you make those systemic changes when you're a tiny cog?
How do you make those systemic changes when you're a tiny cog? That's a really good question. So I think I would say that systemic change can actually happen at like all kinds of different levels. So even within, if you're a tiny cog, the chances are that you're a tiny cog, but there's a culture around your immediate team. So I would personally say, don't set your ambitions too highly, but focus on, I think, I'm a big believer that like everybody can influence their immediate team, 10, 12 people around them, whatever that group is in your immediate periphery. So it might not be that the whole company changes, but like the culture within your team changes. And I think, again, ultimately, that's about kind of recognizing, the power that we all have to be role models with a lot of this stuff. So if you and your boss have a conversation and decide to be modeling a different way of doing things, that can very quickly spill out to the people. Because guess what? Like if you're really struggling and are really overworked, it's probably the same for a lot of the other people around you. So figuring out what to drop for you and for your boss can end up helping the 10, 12, 15 people around you as well. So I would say don't necessarily think that you're going to change the whole world, but kind of change your little bit of the world,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to have to run and be on this podcast in 5 minutes. Jess, shall I leave you in here to?
We'll do a couple more.
Any final questions? I've still got 65 people. Thank you if you're one of the 65 who've hung around for the after dark bit. It's always my favorite bit, and apologies, it's a little bit shorter today than it would usually be. But I'm going to have to run and get my tea ready for Anne Bowden, CEO of Starling Bank. So I'll do that. Nice. If I do that, Jess, can you still, am I going to like end it for everybody if I do that?
That is a very good question. I think because I think that might happen.
So what we'll do is
make me the host. Yeah.
Oh, can I make you the host?
Maybe.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Right, you are the host. I'll leave everybody in your capable hands. And
thanks, Graham.
See you all soon. Thanks, Jess. Thanks,
soon.
Everybody.
Bye. Cool. So we do have a couple more questions that I'll do my best to answer. So one here: how can you stop your boss always volunteering you for stuff that you haven't got time to do? So I think with the productivity basics, like that will really help. So your boss might be volunteering you to do stuff, but they're not clear that you don't have the time to do it. So if you're communicating quite clearly your project list, you have an up-to-date second brain, and if you have a regular medium where you can feed that back to your boss. So I have a sort of a weekly one-to-one with my manager Elena, our MD, and so it just means that in that meeting I can share with her what I'm working on, if I'm feeling overwhelmed with stuff to do, what I can reprioritize. So if they're always volunteering you for stuff, it might be that they don't really have clarity on what you're doing, or they might think that you do have the space. So I try to make sure that nobody's having to read my mind, and I'm quite clear with what I do have on, so that they stop volunteering you, or they know when they do volunteer you for something that you are busy, and they will start offering to change something. So can you do this? I know you've got this on, that can wait. And so hopefully you'll start building that communication with them. There is a question here that was for me and Graham, but I'll answer it, not on behalf of Graham, but on behalf of me. How do you feel when someone tells you no, and are there some no's that you struggle to accept more than others? I think there will always be no's that sting a little bit more than others. So if it's something I'm really excited about, I think it's a great idea, but then somebody else says no, that's always going to hurt a little bit. But ultimately, you end up respecting that person when they're setting their boundaries. So sometimes it can dampen like your fire a little bit if you're super excited about things, but it's useful to remember that just because you're excited about it, that doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to be excited about it. That is a hard lesson to learn. Let's have a look. Any more questions? I think we'll wrap it up there. It's 2 minutes to 3, so that's a nice place to end it. So thank you all that are still on here, sort of still 40 of you. Thank you for coming. And yeah, we have quite a few free webinars coming up, so it'll be great to see you on one of those. So thanks very much, everyone. Bye.